Right, good morning everybody. It's 2 minutes to 8. I said I'd be live at 8 o'clock. It's close enough for jazz, right? It's Tuesday morning, start of a new iRacing week. I'm in the Porsche 911 GT3 car at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, known to me as Mosport. And I've done a few laps yesterday, 50 laps I think. So I'm reasonably up to speed with this quite unique GT3 racing car. It's quite a different beast to some of the others. Morning, Chris. Yeah, love the wheel. It's super solid, and it's the first proper wheel I've had. So yeah, well pleased with it. You like yours? Anyway, yes, intro. So yeah, here we are with the Porsche. Yesterday I got into some sort of more generalized track guide in the Ferrari, and a sort of first, as you approach track for the first time, how to knock the big chunks off with data analysis. So that stream was yesterday, if you care to watch that. I'm much more up to speed. Although this Porsche is a completely different beast, it's, you know, the track's the same, corners are in the same place, the car's roughly the same speed. So we're going to get out, warm up. I've not turned a lap this morning, and we'll dive into the data. I'll be using the VRS setup. I'm using VRS track conditions, and I am streaming VRS content with their express written consent. So without further ado, let's get out there. Oh, see, I tried to sort my telemetry thing out so that it came on automatically, and it should be above my foot up there, but it ain't. So una momenta, let's get the telemetry working. Stupid technology, or is it the idiot using the technology? It's probably the idiot using the technology, isn't it? Right, if it appears twice, someone shout, and because I've just turned the overlay on. Yes, the interesting is the right word for the Porsche. It is backwards happy. Let me turn that down a bit. It is a backwards happy beastie. I'm driving it a lot on the accelerator and very little with the steering wheel. Right, so anybody watching yesterday, and indeed anybody that's been iRacing a while, will know Mosport. I sort of think of it as a bit of a Brands Hatch on steroids, if you will. Lots of blind crests, very line dependent. Oh, let's not go off the road at Moss on the outlap. The most critical exit of the lap, because it's the only long straight. The car's really loud for me. Is it really loud for you? Let's turn it down a bit. So, the Ferrari yesterday, a world-renowned, well-balanced racing car, and that's exactly what happened. Drive it conventionally, in inverted commas, so you know how you drive basically all the cars in iRacing. This Porsche I have the least experience in, and it's quite different. With the engine being where it is, it's very pendulum-y. It has a big pendulum effect at the rear of the car, so it floats into all these turns. So you end up driving the car with a throttle percentage, or at least I do, to control the amount of yaw at the back. I would consider that a more advanced technique. So if you're watching this with a point of view of which GT3 car do I fancy driving, this is a tricky one. It's fun, but it's tricky. It does have the added advantage of having the engine layout over the rear. So the drive traction's amazing. The Macca, could that be Chris, perchance? Morning. I enjoy the McLaren. Another tricky beast, you know. Depends what you're looking for, doesn't it? If you dedicate yourself to one racing car, these more specialist cars can be amazingly rewarding. If you're looking to jump ship and enjoy some of the diversity that iRacing has to offer. The BMW, the AMG, the Ferrari, they're more conventional in inverted commas. Anyway, we'll just get up to speed. We've got the telemetry on. We'll see if we can get down to a time, and then we'll get into the data analysis. Yeah, I reckon if you're finding the Porsche tricky after coming out of other GT3 cars, it's because it requires a different technique. I'm hardly turning the steering wheel around here, as you'll see, and I'm driving the car with a lot of throttle percentage. So essentially, I'm using the accelerator to control how much the rear is in yaw over the blind brows. That, to me, I'd consider an advanced driving technique, and the way you approach the corners is just different in these racing cars, in this Porsche. Lighter braking, again, you know, this is how I drive it anyway. Much less steering angle, and you sort of sail the thing off into the turns, and then you can just plant your foot. Right, so turn 1, don't need to brake. Turn 2, need a light brake. Oh, you need to not turn in on the grass. That is not best practice. I think we've saved it. When you drive around here, there are two sorts of people. There are people that have gone off at turn 2, and there are people that will go off at turn 2. Turn 3 is a late apex. What I find with the data through there is my entry speed is what I need to work on. This is flat over the hill. As long as you can bring the car back to the left, braking for the Moss corner. It's all about the exit. I want to avoid that inside curb. And the other thing that I've found about this Porsche compared to the Ferrari or the BMW that I'm more used to is the amount it revs. Being naturally aspirated, I've been killing my lap time with short shifting. So I've been told to leave it in 5th up here. Anyway, the last sequence of corners, sail it off, downshift to 4th. You need to keep the car to the right here. You need to compromise the entrance to that left-hander, because the run you can get through and out the final corner pays you back in spades if you compromise the left. So anyway, let's try and put a representative lap time together and then go take a look-see at the data. VRS guy is, well, floats around. VRS guy is 15.5. I managed a 15.9 last night under the same track conditions, but it took a bit of patience and a bit of working up to it to get there. So I suppose that leads on to some practice techniques, if you like. I think if you go out on the racetrack and you're backwards everywhere and you're crashing and you're constantly on cold tyres, it interrupts your rhythm. You don't get the car warm, you don't get yourself warm. I find building up slowly, oh see, I'm changing into 6th and I shouldn't be. Building up slowly and staying on the track to find the line and things will almost always be more beneficial. So I would say if you are the sort of person that heads out onto a new track and you end up exiting the pits a lot in the first 10 minutes, you probably need to back it off and just get a feel for the place. You need to complete laps, really. So you sort of drive the car over the top of that crest in this. You float it over in some of the other cars. Really late apex. That patch of tarmac in the middle of the road seems to have more grip than the rest of the track. Might be my imagination. Try and hold it flat down here. Bit of a lift to keep the car left. Avoid the inside curb, and then it's all about the exit. Okay, we lost a bit, but we're 4 tenths up. We can get down to the low 16s. That'll be a decent starting point. I did 50 odd laps last night in this thing. Oh, I've changed to sick again. Warm the brain up first thing in the morning. Right, remember, sacrifice the entry to that one to get the car left. Open up the final corner. $16.5 essentially, all too late. There's some nice camber to help you around this place, but it's a narrow line. Look for the little indent in the tarmac there as your sort of reference point. Yikes for sliding around. Let's have a, rather than ploughing around, sliding around all over the place, let us start the process. So there we go. There's the racetrack. I'm going to start by taking a quick butcher's at my fast lap. Because I've got the little screen in the way, I have to do all of this using the keyboard shortcuts. So excuse me, I have to pan out. Right, so I like to use chase view, and I like to have a quick look round the lap, because as useful as the data is, it doesn't show you in relation to all the other track furniture where you are on the road. It shows you in relation to the other dude where you are on the road. But I like to know if I'm using all the track, and if I'm turning in from the white lines, if I'm maximising the corner radius. You can see from this view, if we roll it, like if we stop here, you can see there's a rubbered in line, and you can sort of see that there's camber here. So, you know, from onboard, we drive from onboard, you see that view all the time. I find this view works better for me. Whether it works for you is something you need to find out yourself. But, you know, to go through some basics of cornering technique, in most circumstances, you want to maximize the track width, because that opens up the corner. That makes the turning radius a wider arc. Wider arc means you can carry more speed. You know, it's simple to say. So as I initiate my turn in, whether the turning is in the right place or not is undetermined yet, but I'm against the white line here. So, you know, tick in the box for turn one. So turn it down. It sort of drops off as you go over this curb here. In an ideal world, I'd want to be clipping here as I'm coming around the corner. But, you know, for a first effort, we're doing all right. Maximise all the road on the exit, but it's important not to drive out there. I think many people know what they should be doing. You need to be maximising the arc. If you're opening the steering wheel to be out here, you've not carried enough speed through the turn. You'll look like you're on the right line, but it's your momentum and inertia and all of that, you know, centrifugal force pushing you to the outside that should take you to this point on the racetrack. And if I'm teaching people to suck eggs, I apologise, but it's important to go through some of the specifics, I think. So come off turn one, you've got to get the car over to the right to open up the entry. Again, you know, I'm not actually on the white line, but fair enough. I've got the car straight. It's settled on the suspension. The car is ready to accept the turn over the very tricky hill in a car with the engine in the back with a big old pendulum effect. So that little piece of tarmac there is what I use as my visual reference. Probably a touch wide there, but especially in the Porsche, it has amazing drive grip. So once you've got the car settled over the hill, you can, when you get a bit of confidence, you can boot it. And again, you should be driving out to the outside of the track. You have to work hard to get the car over to the left. Again, I'm turning in from the white line. You need to look for this stuff. I'd say if you have problems with using all the track width, or if you're diving at the corners too early, which is another common thing that seems to happen to people, start by flipping between the views. If I go into the car, which again I have to cycle through because some idiot put a screen in the way. Where is the cockpit view? Come on, someone tell me. That can't be it. Yeah, there it is. You can have a look at cockpit view and you can give yourself a visual reference to what's going on. So look, I can see that I'm right against the white line. I know that from my offboard view. I can see that if the entire front fender of my stupid rainbow coloured car is on the grass, then I'm somewhere near the edge of the track. Now, I've sort of learnt this stuff over years of iRacing, but if you're struggling with using all the road on turning, stop and look at it. Find a visual reference, and then when we cycle through all the cameras again and go back off board. Hey man, thanks for the follow, appreciate it. You can see that I'm against the white line, so I've now got a visual point of reference for when I'm in the car. But anyway, let's move on. Tricky turn 3, real late apex in here. I used the curb as a clipping point. I'm pointing at it, which is ridiculous. I used the curb here as a clipping point, so I'm a bit wide, but it's early in the morning. I've not warmed up yet. Forgive me that. Again, open the car up on the exit, so as you've not got, if you've got wheel in the race car on the corner exit, you're binding the car up. If you can unwind the lock on a corner like that, where it's an opening radius corner, you free the car up. You're not scrubbing the tyres across the road. You'll help your acceleration speed. Get the car over to the right for the other big drop over the hill. You can see the car want to move. If you just watch the rear of the car, you can see it wants to yaw as it goes over the hill. Important to get it down the left-hand side. Big brake into the face. Avoid this curb. Again, don't point at it, John. Avoid this curb because it tends to bounce the car wide. And as you come up over here, you can see the camber flattens off. I try and leave a bit of margin on the outside here. You know, if you're flirting with this wall comes up at you real fast. There's a big camber. Oh, no, I made it go slow-mo. Check me out. I don't know how I did that. There's a big positive camber here, and this is the long run up the straight. So you want to absolutely get on the throttle as soon as possible and wheel straight as possible and maximise your drive up the straight. Absolutely nothing to do up here but worry about whether the person behind you's got a better run up the straight and are going to dive bomb you up the inside or the outside. And then these final 3 corners all start here. So once again, let's check. I'm pretty near the edge of the road and the car is straight before I start my turning. So the weight is on all 4 tyres. And then as I initiate the turn, I'm transferring the weight onto the loaded side, which helps give me maximum grip. That's what we're looking to do. So you sail the car off in here. You need it to come back to this point and be down the, so it's a late apex basically, so that the car is sort of straight and coming here, because you need to sacrifice this left-hander to open up the final corner. That is how all the VRS guys are doing it. So give up a bit in the left, get the car over. You can use all of the road. And then I can take a bit more speed in there. But again, we've only done a few laps. Right. So that's what a 16.451 looks like. That's a second off VRS. So let me go and find my VRS. And we'll see what that looks like. Okay. Again, to reiterate, I've contacted VRS about using their software like this and streaming, and they are happy with this. Hold on. 22, is it the 23rd today? Is this last night's lappery? Yes. Excuse me while I have a refresh. Doesn't seem to matter whether I up the upload speed on the data logger. It needs a refresh. I don't know why I didn't build it. I wouldn't know how to build it. Here we go. Right, so the 20th and 16.45. Oh look. Oh, 541. Right, okay. So I'm 9/10 of a second away from this dude. Okay, so data. Here is my process. There's more than one way to skin a cat, but I'm looking for 3 things. People that were with us yesterday will have gone through some of this with me, but I've got the delta here. He's the blue line. I'm the whatever the other colour is, dotted line. Here you can see whatever line is on top is the faster speed, and you get it confirmed here. and you can see where the speeds cross over. I'm looking for differences. So in turn 1, I'm getting through there really well. I'm not looking to match exactly what this guy's doing. I think many of these sort of lap guide people, they focus on they focus on teaching people turn here at this blade of grass and all of that sort of stuff. We all have our own style, even using the same track conditions and the same setup. I'm not going to drive the car. Morning, thanks for the follow. I'm not going to drive the car in exactly the same way that this dude does. He's nearly 10,000 iRating. He has an innate understanding of a race car. I'm a part-timer, so I'm looking to match his speed. So here we go, turn 1. I'm less than a tenth off. I'm approaching the corner slightly differently. He's getting a better run out the final corner. We know I hit the curb, so we won't worry about that. I'm 2.7 Ks, 3 Ks faster as I turn in, and you can see I'm slightly wider. What I am essentially looking for is the differences in the delta line here, and then I've got 3 things within my control. I've got the throttle, I've got the brake, of which we don't use any in turn 1, and I've got the steering angle, and these are the 3 things I can control. So when I have identified that there is a difference in this delta line, I'm then looking for what's made the difference. So if we examine here where the points cross over, he's lifted before I have, and he's lifted off more gently. He's come out the throttle more gently. I've lifted off more abruptly. So this accounts for this small difference in speed where my line goes above his. I've come out the throttle more, the other. He's holding a greater throttle percentage, and we both go back on throttle at a similar point. But it's from here onwards that you can see the time difference. So what I gain on the way in, which peaks at 3 Ks, he's got on the exit, but he's got it for longer. It doesn't make a lot of difference. Yesterday in the Ferrari, we were chasing 2 or 3 tenths into this corner to start with, and it's because I started off cold. I was braking because I wasn't confident in the car, and that's what I said earlier about slowly building up. There's no point in starting with the data, in my opinion, and going, oh, he's not braking in turn 1. He might have done 4 hours practice. If you go out cold and you spin at turn 1 and you put it in the hedge and you start from the pits again, you need rhythm and momentum. So go out and do whatever your body tells you and your brain tells you to do. And if it tells you to brake through turn 1 because that's what you need to do to get through it, do it. Log some data, get a starting point, rather than going, oh, he's not braking through turn 1, I must be at 80% throttle. Forget that stuff. Drive the car as fast as you can and make it through the turn, and then you've got a platform to build from. So back to this data, we can see from the sort of midpoint of the corner, I'm a bit wide because I've carried a bit more speed in than him. When he's committed to the throttle, and we've done that almost identically, he's committed to the throttle completely, and bar this little lift just to help the car turn, he has been able to maintain the speed. And you can see where the graph gets wider, the gap gets wider, at least I hope you can see that. It corresponds directly to where I've had to lift because I'm wide, I'm worried about the off track on the exit. So, this is more of a deep dive. I'm searching for fractions now rather than whole tenths. But it's a case of being able to read the data and understand what's made the difference. I'm never looking for this to match exactly. I will never, I doubt if I'll ever drive the car exactly the same way he does. I might carry more corner speed in and less off. I might carry less in and more off. Whatever is the quickest way of me getting through the corner is the right way for me to drive it. But for now, I'm just trying to show you what I'm looking for in the differences. So anyway, that's small potatoes compared to the gap. So let's head round the lap. This is the tricky falling off the hill turn 2. 123 tenths, 0.123. So here we see a bigger difference. Depending on how short the section is, depends on how big this gap is, if you're not aware of that. So you always need to click on it to see what the difference is. This size gap on a longer section might be 20 k's an hour, on a shorter section might be 5 k's an hour. It's only proportionate to the distance of the sector. So here we can see, because he got a better run off the corner, we know he's approached it faster than me. We have a quick look at the line. We can see from the turning point all the way down to where you're back on the throttle, he's carried more speed in. All right, I'm not warmed up, but let's examine why that is. So he has lifted slightly, but then committed to the lift a little later than I have. One of the things I've been working on, and we covered yesterday, and is a personal, it's got nothing to do with car or track specific data with me, and you'll have different habits, is I cross my feet over. You can see here, as I'm on the throttle, as I hit the brake, I start applying brake pressure as I lift the throttle. And what I'm trying to work on, it's pushing me into the corners. What I'm trying to work on is being at 0% as I start applying the brake. It's a fraction of a second, but I've got into a bad habit of starting to apply brake pressure as I'm starting to lift off. I would only ever know that by looking at the data. I don't feel that. I would never spot that. I suppose you could technically spot it if you were looking at the telemetry on screen, but there's a lot going on while you're driving. So the data serves many roles, really. It serves to give you a comparison to the next guy, to show you what you're doing different. You don't have to match them perfectly, but it will show you what they're doing that is making them quicker than you. But it will also build up a picture of your own personal habits, good or bad. You'll do some things consistently well, you'll do some things consistently badly, and it's a case of eliminating the bad stuff and working on the good stuff. So here we go. I'm crossing my feet over again. Naughty John must stop that. But when we get into the difference in the gap here, he's lifted later and he's braked less. Okay, that's fairly straightforward stuff, isn't it? He's going faster because he's on the throttle for longer, and he's braked less as he comes over the hill. So although it's only 10%, this difference here, me going onto the brake and pushing the car into the corner slightly, and he's crossing his feet over here, which may be symptomatic of this, tail end happy Porsche. But this is where this gap appears. So we can then sort of drill down and have a look. I come off the brake too abruptly. We know what a conventional trail braking should look like. It's much more, the north face of the Eiger, and then I don't know if there is a soft face, but the nice gentle ski soap release. We're driving through the corner slightly differently. I'm slowing the car down more, which is probably why I'm on the throttle harder. I'm a bit wider, so I get into the throttle more to try and turn the car. And at this point, what we'll see consistently with all VRS drivers versus my data is their steering trace is more erratic. If you look at the little peaks and troughs, he's got hardly any lock on as he turns over the hill, then goes to some positive lock, big catch of a slide, back on with some lock. They work the wheel a lot more. It may be that they're more on the limit than me. It may be that they're simply trying to do a fast lap, and if you drove like that for 40 minutes, you are going to roast your tyres. I tend to be quite smooth on the steering wheel, so these are differences that I don't want to engineer out of my driving. My ability to save tyres is one of my strengths. I just want to bring my deficiencies, work on my deficiencies to bring my lap time down. So anyway, we know I'm not sending the car over the top of the hill fast enough. Turn 3, the perennial problem. Let's check. Yep. Crossing my feet over. So's he. Into a straight braking zone when the car is level and is going slightly uphill and is not cambered, this isn't good. It's pushing the car into the corner. There is a big difference, and seemingly there isn't as big a gap in the data. And I think this is what can confuse people when they're looking at this stuff. We go back here and we're like, well, that's a smaller gap, but a massive gaping chasm here. It's because the section's smaller. So if we click on this down here, look, 8.8 kilometers an hour. So what this looks like, you can't visually go on what this looks like. You have to combine all the pieces of data. You have to look at the sector, you have to drill down into the differences in speed, and then you come down here to examine what's made the difference. On the face of it, there's not a lot of difference here, is there? It's a bigger gap, but my data trace, if you exclude the steering, because as we know, they work the wheel harder than me. If we go back here, this is a lot different, but less time loss. Yeah, it's a shorter piece of road. This is much more similar. So therefore, it's harder to unpick. So let's have a look. 6.5 Ks into the corner. These tiny little differences, this little extra, the fact that I build the pressure slightly quicker, so I'm scrubbing the speed off the car more abruptly, even though we build exactly the same amount of pressure and I bleed off sooner. That's allowing his car to enter the corner 5Ks, 4Ks, and that gap grows as we come down here, and you see the line get further apart and the gap get bigger, the time gap get bigger, because he's rolling off the brake here and I'm just holding this brake pressure. It's seemingly insignificant and it's easy to miss in the data. You'd look at this and you think I'm doing this sector pretty well, but this tiny difference on entry here and this tiny difference here are making a consistent 5 down to 4, as he does that little bump on the brake, but then up to 8 Ks an hour. If someone ran past you at 8 Ks an hour, you'd know about it, wouldn't you? They'd be moving. And then the on throttle, I lose from the middle off. I'm more committed to the throttle because I've slowed the car down a bit more, but because he's carrying more speed at the point of acceleration, 147 Ks to my 138, he's obviously slowed the mass of the car down less. He's on a slightly better line. He's able to commit to the throttle, albeit blends out, which probably coincides with a catch of the wheel. Yeah, I think he introduced the throttle maybe a fraction too hard and the car got loose. But because he slowed the car down less, he's got less mass to accelerate. Not less mass, but he's got more momentum in the race car, so he can accelerate off the turn. So although this looks like I'm doing this sector better, these infinitesimal differences are making a big gap. Something to work on, something that's easy to miss as well. Right, okay. Miracle of miracles, I'm getting through Moss Corner. I was losing half a second when I started yesterday. And this is what I mean about the sort of progression. If I looked at this data, if I'd have tried to do what I'm doing currently yesterday, I would have been all over the place. I'd have been backwards. I'd have been in the fence. My natural pace was half a second off in this sector. But because I was able to consistently do that half a second off and build up some rhythm and some momentum and start understanding the car, I can then work on it to the point where I'm under a tenth. And we can see the data is different. So I'm looking for patterns in my data, as I say, and then I'm looking to reduce the gap. So we're seeing a pattern which is the entry speed. We know I cross my feet over. In this particular case, it's not been too bad. I've lifted slightly as I've come over the crest to keep the car to the left. He has had tiny little lifts, but has been more confident over the crest. But here we go again. This little extra, although I don't build the brake pressure as much, this little extra wedge here is where we start seeing this time difference. And in this particular case, 12 k's an hour down the hill, 10 k's. Although I hold a faster minimum speed as I come through the middle, he's sailed it off in there a bit wider, and our exits are almost identical. So in this particular instance, I'm going to try and do everything the same, because I'm not doing badly through this corner. And I'm not trying to match these little blips here, and I'm not trying to match his steering and all of that stuff. I'm just trying to be a little bit braver to reduce this deficit. This 9k's, 10k's, 11k's. It comes down the hill and it breaks into a really big face for the Moss hairpin. So that will be my focus for Moss, to try and just be a bit later on the brakes. As I'm sure you are, really good up the straight. And here we lose the biggest amount of time. And this has consistently been the case for me, regardless of the car. It's been the turn 3 sector, which is after the big first, obviously it's after turn 2, isn't it? But after the big drop-off left-hander, and this final sequence of corners. And again, we see quite a difference in the data, but we're seeing the same traits. As we tip into the big fast uphill right-hander, he's carrying more speed, 10k's. Let's go examine it. I'm still building brake pressure before I've completely let off the throttle. I was working on it yesterday and I got better at it yesterday, but you will not undo your habits in an hour. You will not undo your habits in a week. You will not undo your bad habits in a month. You have to consistently remind yourself of the things you don't do well and consistently work on them until a point where you turn the thing on for the first time in the morning, you record some data and you're not doing it again. And then record data when you're racing. And again, if you can race, if you can do the first few laps of a race with all of that going on around you, and you've not got your old bad habits, then you should be cured, Anyway, so let's get into this. So I'm braking twice as much percentage into this long right-hander, so I can work on that. And I think you can see I've slowed the car down too much, because I have this blip on the throttle, and then essentially we both get to a similar sort of point at the corner. I'm using a bit less road than him, and as we turn the car to the right, I've braked less, but I've braked a bit earlier, and we see another 14 k's an hour. I'm wider, I should be on a better line, but the trade-off is between the arc you're driving through the corner and the speed you're able to carry. And in the case of these 3 final corners, the setup for this one dictates how you get round the left and then how you get off the final corner. They're all linked. So we see consistently where the entry speed into the turns, I'm losing time. It seems small, it's quite a lot of speed, and this is 0.3 difference. If I can find 0.3 in these final turns, I will be well pleased. So we've been around the lap. That equates to a 0.9 of a second difference. Essentially, what have we learned and how do we go faster? To start with, we see some consistencies, and that is the entry speed into the turns. I am consistently slower into the corners, and that's partly because I'm braking a bit too much, and that's partly because I am crossing my feet over. So for this next run, I'm not going to look into the minutiae of this final part of the lap or anything. I'm going to go out and I'm going to work on one thing, and that is sailing the car off into the corner a bit faster and consciously not trying not to cross my feet over, because you can't work on too much all at once. It's not possible. Or, you'll give yourself so much in your brain to work on that you end up doing nothing well. So let's crack on. yikes. This car is sketchy on cold tyres. I'm going to try and roll out the brake just a little softer as I get into there, see if that helps. But this for me is a good base. If you want to start improving your own ability, you have to move your own comfort level. Oh, changed into 6 again, bad habit. You have to start moving your comfort level in the car higher up. We see from the VRS data the guy works the steering wheel more than I do, and it's because the car's partly his technique, but it's partly because the car's dancing more on the edge of its ultimate ability. So that's what, I need to get out of my comfort zone, because if I do the same thing that I always do, it's going to result in the same lap time. And I think it's important to note that if you're trying to get out of your comfort zone, you will get stuff wrong. And you have to push through getting it wrong in order to change the habits. You've got to find the new rhythm for driving. And that'll be, it'll be frantic, and it'll be like, whoa, and yeah, and all of that sort of stuff to start with. But once you find that and you can start living, even if it's a couple of corners, with the car being more lively, the steering wheel being looser in your hands and all of that sort of stuff, that will soon become normal, and then you've moved your understanding on a bit, and then you can try and get back to that point and get back to that same slightly out of control feeling, but already you're coming at it from a slightly faster base. Okay, had a bit of a slide. Let's get the car over the crest. Commit to the throttle. Oh, yikes. Too much sliding on the way in. But you see, we were green up until that point. So here's where the balance... Oh. 3-point turn on a racetrack. Here's where the balance needs to be struck between getting around the track and navigating the lap without stuffing it in the fence. But once you've reached your own limit, you've got to accept the fact that you'll make some mistakes. The beauty of sim racing, of course, is there's no crash damage, and unless you've got your wheel turned up too high, there's no personal injury worries. So we can go and push the envelope, and we can try and take ourselves out of our comfortable rhythm and get into a new rhythm, like changing to 6. Definitely lighter on the brakes there, and the car's looser in the mid corner, but I'm ready for it. Oh, it's horrible. I'm ready for it now. It's not, it's not a surprise. Right, I said I'd do an hour of this and then chuck in the BMW. So let's attempt to not be rubbish. And like we're delving into the data in a specific car around a specific track. There's an awful lot more going on in terms of weight transfer and the relationship that you have between the wheel and the pedals, and how you're moving the weight around the car and slip angle, and like there's a load to get into, but you can't fill your head with all of it all at once. So for now, we're trying to not cross our feet over, and we're trying to carry a bit more speed. Keep it simple. Having to catch the car on the throttle, turning it with the gas. Oh, it works. become too wide there, so we'll try and hug the inside a bit more. So, you know, here we go. It seems like I've taken a step backwards, but I'm searching. I'm exploring different parts of the road, different braking techniques, and I'm trying to find the new balance, what will work to increase my lap time. Right now the car is very loose at the rear. Oh, see, we're wider in there. That might be a touch too much. But it was better down the hill. I braked later. Hopefully I didn't cross my feet over. You know, I'm challenging myself to do the things that we've found in the data and work on those things, and it's going to take some time to get used to that. There we go, better turn in. A little late into the final corner, but we got the other two parts of the corner right, so we've learnt a thing. You know, anyone that has watched any of these will know I call them pieces of your own puzzle. It's simply trying to find the pieces that make up a complete picture of your driving, and the way you do it will be different to the way I do it, will be different to Mr. I'm nearly 10k. Let's get a new set of boots. I think I've ruined these. Mr. I'm 10k VRS guy. Righty. We will be better. Those tyres were a dodgy set, obviously. Right. Cool, it's all good out that practice, but yowza, this car is a handful on cold tyres. As I said yesterday, if you are looking to maximise your time while you're practicing, if you've blown a lap, if you've blown turn one, and essentially the rest of the lap is a write-off, practice the stuff that is rarely practiced in iRacing, which is the racecraft stuff. Do the rest of the lap as if someone's inside you or outside you, and practice turning in offline, or like here, you know, imagine someone's dived up the inside. Learn what it's like round the outside. Can you then, do you have to go to second to get the car through this corner? You know, these little differences might make all the difference in a race if you've practiced it and the next guy hasn't. Right. A bit too early apex there, couldn't commit to the throttle. Send the car off over the rails. Yeah, too wide, and the time shows it. Bit too frantic. Maybe the fronts aren't quite ready, but we're looking for a rhythm, and that's pushing too hard. Hey man, thanks for the follow. Right, power. Right, I'm going to use my laser focus for this next lap, because I was in the 15s last night, and it's not like I wasn't waffling rubbish, as I was. A much better final series of corners. Right. Probably a bit too up the inside, but we committed to the throttle. Let's get the car over the brow. Power. We'll accept it. Oh, touch wide. still in the green. It's all good. Right, we know we need to be a bit braver down here. That felt more on the edge. Touch wide on the exit, but we've gained a 10th. When you get to a certain number of laps, point of your development, you're looking for tenths, and this is the hard bit, isn't it? You know, we can all be 2 seconds off pace and go find that time easy. Right, more speed needs to be carried into here, so try and brake lighter, turn down, car squared off, roll off the brake. Wanted to get away from me in the mid corner, puts us wide into the final bit, and we lose a bit on the exit. Oh, and we're taken off track. But we're down to a 16.3, so we're moving in the right direction. You can see the car's looser in my hands. We're nearer the limit than we were before. So now I've just got to get used to that sensation, not be scared of it, because I know the car can do it. There we go, much better drive off that corner. 2 tenths up. See if I can hold it flat over the brow. Oh, little tiny lift. Roll it in. Look for the exit. So there we go. Morning, thanks for the follow. Few sketchy laps trying to work out the new picture, and we're now 1/4 of a second up. Let's see if we can keep it through these final sequence of bends. Oh, cars on the edge. Oh no, it wanted to swap directions on me on the change of direction. So here we reach the sort of frustration, the potentially frustrating point of the practice, where you're sort of putting it together but making mistakes. I think a lot of sport these days is mental, isn't it? You know, you more and more reading about how they're employing sports psychologists, and I think there's an element of that. We do this in our free time. It's something that most people want to improve. They want to move up the I rating. It's your badge of honour. It's perceived that the higher you go up the splits, the better the racing is. I'm sure in some cases that's true. Certainly generally the more competent the field will be. But it can be tough if you don't know how to wade through the data, and if you find yourself spinning a lot and things. But I would say persevere, break it down into bite-sized chunks, find the thing you're doing that's causing you the biggest time loss, and just work on that, and you'll get it. It might require you to soften your hands, it might require you to back the corners up, it just a willingness to experiment with what you are doing will pay you back. Like anything, like learning a racetrack, you're not going to perfect it in an hour, but if you don't ever start the process, you'll be stuck doing what you always do. We were loose over the turn 2. We're slightly overdriving the race car. We're sort of hustling it round to get the time rather than doing it in a nice, controlled, smooth fashion. Try not to run too wide in the mid-corner. Power. Better run out of Moss. And we've got our optimal into the 15s again. I think I peaked at a 15.8. My optimal was a 15.8 something, and I did a 15.9 something last night. So we're close. Bit more gentle on the turn in. There we go, 16.2. So we've improved our lap time. So, there's different things at play here, isn't there? You want to be able to do this lap time consistently, but at the moment we're in the trying to find time phase. So again, what I like to do when I've gone a chunk quicker is load that lap up, and as I say, I like the chase view. Use whatever you feel is best. So there we go, we're using all the road on turn in, we're using a bit more of the curb through the turn 1 apex, we're using all the road on exit, decent. We're using absolutely all the road on turn in there. You don't really want to be turning in from more than another inch wide. Nice apex, giving myself a bit of margin off the corner. Get the car back to the left. Look for the end of the curb as your rough point. Probably pushed a little wide there. But you can glean stuff from the replay, and it just helps you to build up a picture in your mind. I see I'm probably a touch wide in here. I don't want to be over this inside curb, but I've done more meters. The car's going slowly. You kind of get the impression if I was here, if I was driving slightly, but we'll see when we look at the data. I certainly got a good exit. Nice clipping point. Didn't run over the exit curb, and we're off. Nothing to do. Does anyone ever check? Do you ever check your temperature dials? You probably should in a real car, but it's the sort of thing that a real racer would be doing, so maybe I should. Right, we're using all the road on turn in. Picking a nice late clipping point. Getting the car to the left, bit of a slide in the mid corner. Yeah, nice line through there, using all the exit curb. Looks faster than the previous lap, was faster. So we then need to go and see what's made the difference. One day I'll learn how this thing works. I'll just have a quick refresh because that seems to help bring the data in. Never met a race driver who cared about temps. Fair enough. Maybe if you're racing at the level where you're paying for the thing yourself, that's more of a concern. I don't look at the temps, but then it's not really a real car. Shh. Okay, so what we've gone from a 16.4 to a 16.28. So we've taken a bit off. Let's go and see. Right, compared to our last lap, we are nearer the limit, but I'm a tenth down in turn 1. So we'll have a quick squiz through Y. I've carried a bit more speed in. The lines look really similar here. Look, you can see the racing line is really similar. So what have I done that's caused a problem? I'm out the throttle way more than this dude, and it makes an 8 km/h difference from the middle and off because he's committed more to the gas. So if I had done that sector and this sector here, sector 2, turn 2, how I did in the previous lap, I'd be down to less than half a second away. But saying that, I know I can drive these corners better because I have done before. I was focusing on turn 3 and turn 8 on that run. I wasn't necessarily looking to do anything other than work on the weak areas because I've done these better before, so I should be able to do them better again. So again, we'll have a quick look through middle and off. I blended out the throttle. I'm not too concerned about this at the moment because I know I can hit these corners better. Here is where I'm looking. I'm still losing time on the entry to turn 3. I can see I've not got the car as far back to the left, so I've not opened up the corner as much. I've run a touch wide in the mid corner, but am I crossing over my brakes? Yes, but 20% less. So the time is getting a bit closer. I'm doing this a bit better. This is just a case of sailing the car off into the corner. I'm getting through moss really well now in this car. Pleased about that. This is still a bit bumpy. You still wouldn't want to be skiing down my run, would you? Much rather be skiing down the blue run. But aside the fact I've lifted off still too early, I'm not crossing my feet over here. I'm getting the car into the corner better. It's 8 k's an hour. It's made 3/4 of chuffle difference. He slows the car down slightly more than I do in the mid corner. So, happy enough with that. And confirmation that it's not just the corner, it's also the straight after it. Well, I've even gained a bit of time on him up through there. So that might be enough to put me in the draft. So I'm not worried about Moss now. Here we were, 3/10 down? We are now significantly closer. The line looks much better. And let's have a look what's happening. So, work. So I'm carrying a touch more speed into the apex, but I've braked more still. Looking to see if I've cured my bad habits. They're better. Again, Rome wasn't built in a day. So he's still got a bit more speed than me on the way through the big right-hander. I'm braking a bit more, and again, we see the patterns appearing. There is a difference appearing just here in the speed. It's 8 kilometers an hour. I've braked a bit earlier and a bit more than him, and I'm still crossing my feet over. So I need to put a big note on the center of the screen. Idiot boy, stop crossing your feet over. But then we get down to this part, and because I've sacrificed a bit here, sacrificed 8 k's here, I'm 8.2 k's up on the exit. I've needed to brake less. No one's going around the outside of you here in a race. Although saying that, I did manage to get down the inside of someone in a GT3 race years ago. But if you're by yourself in traffic, I can probably get through the entry a bit tighter, which might drop another 1/10 off that time. But there we see a progression. So if I can nail the start of the lap like I did on my previous lap, if I can make this a little better, and if I can continue to do turn 5 through to the final corner at turn 10 the same, I am half a second away from the 9.8k VRS guy in a Porsche, and I'm pretty pleased with that. And then once I've found that, the trick is to then go out and try and find the rhythm to do those laps consistently. Right, anyway, so there we go. That is an hour of Porsche. I am just going to take a personal pit stop, and then I'm going to jump in the BMW, which I have not driven at all around this track yet, and see what the differences are, see how it stacks up. So I hope you can stay with me. I will be back in 2 minutes. Alrighty then, let's get out of all of this stuff and jump in a car which is probably like exactly backwards, isn't it? With the engine in completely the other end of the car, because that seems sensible. What could possibly go wrong? Right, I'm doing all of this from VRS, so I'm using their conditions, their setups, their dudes for my data analysis. Okay, and go. Righty. Oh, there's so many things to turn on. Where are we? Base shaker time. If you don't base shaker, I highly recommend it. Although I don't have any kids to wake up, so, you know. Right, okay, I'm going to chop this into BMW sections and Porsche sections, so I'll just waffle a quick intro. Please forgive me that. Good morning. We're at Mosport in the BMW for week 11 of the iRacing VRS Sprint Series. I'm using VRS conditions, VRS setup, VRS telemetry analysis, which I pay for. I'm not affiliated to, but I do have written permission to use. So let us grab their setup, my setups, and Mosport. I've not turned a single lap in the BMW. Right, 7 wing, standard diff, medium. Right, looks reasonably well balanced. Okay, so I'm just going to head out, do some laps. When my times level off to a reasonable point, oh, the stupid, where's the telemetry? Come on, the
matching
telemetry
car
thing.
and track data found in Sim
I
Experience
will
database.
get into the data and
Profile
we'll go through
modified.
the process of trying to examine where the deficiencies are and how to minimize the gaps. So this will be fun coming from the Porsche, but here we go. Oh, yikes. Okay. As I said in the last hour, there's no sense in me looking at the data straight away and trying to match the guy before I'm warmed up. So I'm simply going to let the track unfold in the way my brain and my hands and my feet are telling me, and try and make it through a couple of laps, get the tyres warm up, get a feel for where the car is loose or where I can take more speed into the corner, and then go from there. Quite a different tone, obviously, to the Boxster engine. Oh, yikes. Right. So we've got the complete opposite going on here. We've got a car that's much more stable on turning to the point where it's understeering. Oh, it really is as well. And much looser off throttle. On throttle, on corner exit compared to the Porsche. So whether or not this is a sensible switch remains to be seen. But let's see what we can do. 15.3 I think is the VRS time in this car, using these conditions and this setup. Oh, that's as close as you want to get to the edge of the road. I'm probably about 150 laps down across yesterday and now this morning in the Ferrari, the Porsche and now the BMW, so I know where the track goes. It's just a case of becoming used to the differences in the race cars. You feel the big old front engine wanting to pull the car offline. Okay. I mean, it might as well be completely starting from scratch again. It is that different. So as we know from earlier today and yesterday, one of my personal problems is racing related personal problems, that is the fact that I cross my feet over. I start to apply brake pressure as I'm starting to lift off the throttle. So that's something that is not car specific and that I'm working on, even on these exploratory outlaps. The car specific stuff, we will need to get into the data to see what I'm wanting to do naturally and what actually works. Okay, 16.6, so not altogether shabby, and we're up now, look.